Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I am here with Sam Seder, who is the host of the Majority Report, a comedian, and is the voice of Mort, I believe, right, on Bob's Burgers.
It's actually
And
Hugo.
it's
Mort is actually
Hugo, yes.
it's
And
Andy Kindler.
yes, okay, that's it. And formerly the voice of Fenton Muley on home videos.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. Fun story. Whenever I was like 9 years old, like 9, 10 years old, I was in fourth grade and fifth grade. I would get up at 4 a.m. in the morning every night, every day to watch Adult Swim. There was a show, it was an anime show called Inuyasha. And at first it used to be at 4 a.m. They would play 2 30-minute episodes, but then on like the weekends, they would play an episode of home movies, then Inuyasha. And I started to watch home movies and liked home movies. So I pretty much seen every episode of home movies probably like
Wow.
10 times and didn't know it was you that was the voice of one of the characters until I started watching Majority Report like 10 years later.
Wow, that's funny. That's very funny.
Yeah. So you've been an important part of my entertainment life for most of my life. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have been at service.
Yeah. Whoa. Stop what you're doing. Okay. If you like this video and you like the other content on my channel, please hit the like button on this video. Also, go hit subscribe like right now. And also, when you hit subscribe, click the bell so you can get notifications whenever I put out a new video. So, thanks. All right, enjoy the rest of the video. So, first question I have here is what made you want to be a comedian? Could you tell me about your start with comedy and writing, and who were some of your influences?
Well, I can tell you the influences pretty easily. Um, when I was really young, I really liked Rodney Dangerfield. Like when I was like adolescent,
Hmm.
um, and then it was, I would say, well, Woody Allen at that time too, and but then really when I started to do comedy, it was guys, it was Albert Brooks and it was Andy Kaufman and Lenny Bruce. I would say those three really captured the type of different work that I would do. Um, those three guys. I don't know that I've done. If you were to sort of plot them on on some type of a graph, I don't think there's anything I've done that doesn't fit within those parameters. Um, and I, I had sort of, I guess, been dual track my whole life, like sort of politics and entertainment. When I was in high school, I directed the Doherty High Variety Show, which was as close as we had to anything that had to do with performance arts. In my high school, we had not a lot of resources. But I also at that time like was involved in local Worcester politics. And when I went to college, I went as a theater major, but I was also involved in like the school government, and I got fired for a production from a production where my job was only to sort of pull the. I was in charge of pulling the rope for the, I guess the elevator or the dumb waiter essentially that would bring up. I can't remember who was Midsummer's Night's Dream, and maybe it was like the Queen Nymph or something was to rise up, and my job was just to pull it.
Hmm.
And I was at rehearsal every day, and then like one night, a week before the production having done this, practiced it many times, I told I guess it was the teacher who was directing. I'm not sure exactly. This is in college. I had to go because I was doing a speech for campaign night. I think I was running for freshman class president, maybe. And the guy was like, "Well, we'll get somebody else to do it." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll be back tomorrow or Tuesday." And he's like, "No, no, no, we're getting someone else to do it. If you're not committed to the theater, you're not going." And I was like, "You know what? I'm no longer a theater major, because that is absurd." Um, but I did a little bit of radio in college, and um, I remember writing comedy for the parody newspaper, and so I would do stuff like that. And John Benjamin and I actually, who went to college, coincidentally, we went to college together. We would do stuff like fake recordings, and we would do stuff like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember that. Um, and then I went to law school. I took a year off, and then I ultimately went to law school. But um, I guess I first tried stand up. I was working and traveling in Australia, and I came home and I stopped off at a friend's on my way back to Boston in Louisville, Kentucky, and I did stand up at an open mic for the first time in my life, more or less, and that sort of haunted me in my first year of law school. And John Benjamin at that time was at Northwestern getting his presumably his PhD in Holocaust studies, and we both dropped out at the same time and moved to Boston to start doing comedy.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I was doing a little bit of open mic during law school, not much, and I just realized like, well, I'm going to try this, and because I need to be able to try it, or I'm going to regret not trying it for the rest of my life. Um, so that's what I did.
Okay. Um, so what was it like doing like open mic type stand-up stuff? Like like first, how often did you do it, and what was like the first few times that you did it?
Well, I did it a lot
Hmm.
in Boston, and over the course, and I started doing some opening gigs as a stand-up. I guess like 2 or 3 years into it, um, maybe 2 years into it. I don't really remember actually, but um,
And this is like early 90s
yeah,
ish. Okay.
early
Yeah.
'90s, and I mean, I never was really a stand up. I mean, a good stand up will just keep working the same material over and over again. And I just couldn't, I just found that super, super boring. And I couldn't, I needed to entertain myself more. And I think that's where like I was more like Andy Kaufman in that respect, in that like I would do bits that were more about fucking with the audience in the final analysis. And so there was a lot of uh, I had fun doing it, but it wasn't. I knew that I didn't ultimately want to be a stand-up. I was doing a lot of sketch work at that time
Yeah.
with John Benjamin, but with David Cross and who else was in there that you might know of? John Ennis, who was in Mr. Show, was in this. I mean, Jonathan Groff, who's gone on to be an executive producer of a lot of big sitcoms. Um, oh gosh, a guy named Ed Driscoll, who wrote it for Dennis Miller at one point. A guy named Grant Taylor. Um, Lauren Dombrowski, who before she passed away was one of the top, I think was the head writer of Mad TV at one point.
Hmm.
I mean, so there was
Okay.
a bunch of really, really talented people there.
Yeah.
And um, all the comedians would come through Boston, and the ones who were really sort of trying to do something interesting in terms of comedy would come by. So like that's where I met Mark Maron. Maron had left Boston, but when he would come back, he would hang in this same circle of comedians, and Louis C.K. and Janine Garofalo and Laura Keitlinger and oh gosh, Dave Attell was around at that time, and I met Sarah Silverman through, well, I guess her sister, but her sister was sort of like associated in that area too. I mean, so um, it was a really interesting thing happening in Boston, particularly in Cambridge, I guess. I mean, we all
Hmm.
lived in Somerville, but we worked out of a room in Cambridge. Um, that was going on at that time. I mean, some really interesting comedians.
Okay. Yeah, because whenever I was in middle school, like around 13-ish, uh, that's when I started getting interested in comedy. Like I started watching a lot of Saturday Night Live, and uh I started writing comedy sketches. And a lot of my friends and kids at school thought they were funny. Um, and it was kind of interesting. Like it was like, and I wanted to be a comedian. Like I decided at that time I wanted to be a comedian, and um eventually at some point I like stopped wanting to be a comedian. I don't know exactly why, but like it, but comedy always interested me, and like Saturday Night Live is still one of my favorite shows. I try to watch it every Saturday, or at least record it so I can watch it later. And I liked some stand up, um, like of course Chris Rock,
Right.
and I liked a lot of the stuff that Chris Rock did, stuff like that. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten interested in it again, and I've even been encouraged by people to like try stand up sometimes. So I'm thinking about doing that eventually. Um, Maybe
It's
I don't
fun to
know.
try. Why not? I mean, it's scary. I think
Yeah,
the first time for a lot of people, but it's definitely a fun thing to go down to the open mic and give it a try.
yeah. I've gotten better with public speaking, like with the show and with substitute teaching. So I'm not so much nervous about like the act of speaking publicly.
Right. No, no, it's the
Yeah, it's
that sense. There's a feeling that I've experienced. It's never really happened to me so much because many times I was trying to piss off the audience in such a way. Like a lot of times, like you would go and you do open mic and people would set up a video camera to record it.
mhm,
And I was doing a lot of video even back then, which was pretty early in the trajectory of you know, we had something called a compact C camera, so a small VHS camera
yeah,
with a mini VHS tape that you
mhm,
would put into an adapter,
yeah,
and I would put that camera behind me
mhm.
to shoot the audience because I wanted
See
to
their reaction. Yeah.
yes, as I would do some of these bits that were really more designed to annoy them, but there were every now and then you can go into an open mic room and someone is doing, they're super nervous, and it makes the audience nervous.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could do poorly but still feel like you're not, still project that you're not having a nervous breakdown up there. But
Hmm.
there's some people who get really nervous and it feels like the room is full, as someone's pumped in some type of gas
Hmm.
into the room, and everyone is sort of like in like a semi hallucinogenic state. It's a very odd feeling, but I sort of got off on it a little bit. So, but tried to recreate that. But yeah, you should do it. It's scary, but you've got nothing to lose.
Yeah. Um, I have a few friends that do stand up and stuff like that. And I'll run by some ideas with them, and they'll tell me, yeah, it's a good idea. You should try that, or you should, keep that one in mind. And so I've been coming up with some things lately. So I don't know when I'll have time to ever present that in any kind of way, because I'm doing a whole lot. But, you know, I think
Well, keep
sometimes,
practicing it.
yeah, because for me, sometimes it's a lot of the jokes I'll come up with are too niche, and like I need like to explain it to everyone around me because I have too
Mm-hmm.
much knowledge about certain things. So like if I make a joke, it's like, okay, only like two people in here out of the 30 are gonna understand it.
You ever heard
So
that Steve Martin bit about performing for, I think it was a plumbing convention?
mhm.
Did you ever hear that?
I
It's
might
it's
have, but I'm not
it's
sure.
oh
What is
God,
it?
what was the name of the album? I what I Comedy's Not Pretty, maybe that's what it was, maybe that album. And he
Hmm.
tells a joke about like he was at a maybe I think it's something to the effect like I was at a plumbers convention and I you know or he tells a joke that he told there, which is like that's not a 3/8 socket wrench. That's a that's a monkey wrench. And he's like, well, that killed at the plumbers convention. Yeah, I mean, so it's important that everybody has the same
Yeah,
um, at least fundamental
yeah,
um, understanding of what you're talking about.
yeah. Because I think that's like the one thing that I struggle with sometimes. It's just like, okay, that's a funny joke, but I can only tell that to one person because they understand the history behind all of this. I have
Yeah.
to back it up a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Well, you
yeah,
gotta. I
yeah.
mean, I think one of the things that I was feeling around the time that I got this chance to do talk radio was that my comedy, um, at that point was like more of a function of things like Who's the Caboose or Pilot Season or I mean I was still sitcom acting, but
Hmm.
I didn't I just that just felt more like a day job to me.
Yeah.
And but the stuff I really wanted to do was sort of the more uh film work and uh TV show stuff that I was doing. But at that time there was nobody was doing those type of opportunities. Like I
Hmm.
stumbled into one or two. I was able to do like, you know, a pilot for USA Studios in a way that nobody had really done pilots before
Hmm.
because they were a little bit desperate and they weren't sure the laws had changed in 96. 96, the Telecommunications Act
Yeah.
changed the industry in that if you were the production company owned by ABC, it used to be that you could not sell to ABC Network. You
Yeah.
could not own the product and distribute it. So ABC Studios would actually produce stuff for every network except for ABC. And so when you had independent studios like USA Studios, they could compete on a level playing field.
Hmm.
When the Telecommunications Act changed, ABC Studios, or I guess the Sand Dollar or Disney, whatever they called it at that time, could produce for ABC. And then NBC Studios could, and of course, you're going to buy your own stuff because that's where you
Yeah.
make your money, at least in the old model. I'm not sure how it works today. And in terms of syndication. And so USA Studios after this was a little bit of a panic. It was Barry Diller's company at the time. I don't know what's, what the deal is. They have a network now, I guess. But, and I made a deal to do a show where there was no development process or typical development process. It was, somebody had seen my movie and was like, I'd like something like that. And I'm like, all right, well, but you can't, I don't do the development. But if you give me the money, I'll bring it to you.
Hmm.
And it was, for a lot less than a normal pilot would have been. And we shot it on Digi Beta, which at the time nobody was doing. And in fact, I think we shot that on high definition video, which was the first, we had like literally the first Sony camera. We had camera 0001 or something. And I did that, and I was able to do a couple other shows sort of like that, but that model was just not established yet. There was no Netflix, there was no
Yeah.
and no Amazon, no Apple TV, none of those things. And so nobody was doing that. And now that's very much like the model where they like, here's money, bring us 9 episodes, no development, much less development. The development will be the show that you produce. And I remember at the time, this was back in like maybe '05 or '06. I can't remember when it was. But Louis C.K., who I was friends with at the time, um, he just I was living up in upstate New York, and he was coming up to the area because his kids were up here. I mean, it was sort of a complicated
Mm-hmm.
situation. But I had met with him after he had just gotten off the train. He had just cut the uh, the pilot of Louis
Yeah.
and the FX show,
Mm-hmm.
and he had cut it on the train on his laptop. And they had basically he had gotten one of those deals where it's like, here, just bring me a product. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, I didn't realize this was happening in TV, and it really wasn't happening quite yet. But I was
Yeah.
like, this is where it's headed. And I was like, I don't know if I would have stayed in entertainment had I known that it was going to come around. But my sense was that like what I was doing was too specific
Yeah.
for network television. Like it, but
Mm-hmm.
it would have been in an era where you have, you know, more niche audiences now.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been something that maybe, but ultimately I found talking about politics more fulfilling, I guess. I don't know how we got on that, but I guess that sense of like my comedy was, I always knew my comedy was sort of narrow. I was performing to a specific,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's not a recipe for great, for at least stand up, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so a few days ago on the Majority Report, you said that you had said something that someone told you it would prevent you from being able to go on Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
well, I can't remember what the thing was specifically who you said it to. But were you ever invited for like to do an audition on SNL, or did you ever want to be on Saturday Night Live? Um,
There was definitely a time I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I mean, by the time I got to be in my mid 20s when that was a possibility,
mhm,
um, I was less interested in it because I just felt like what the show wasn't what it was when I was a kid. And I remember going in to meet with one of the producers, and it was in LA, and it was during the summer, so they were down, and I
yeah,
was interested in doing short films, sort of like Albert Brooks had done.
yeah,
I don't know if you ever seen any of those Albert Brooks films from like the first year or two of Saturday Night Live. And I pitched a couple of things, and the guy was like, "Will 12-year-olds get this?" And
what?
I'm like,
No,
no. And he goes, "Yeah, well, you need to do something that you think like, 12 to 16-year-olds will get."
really?
And I was and I think that was my reaction. I was like, well, I
This is like
don't,
2000, right? Or like, yeah, no, no, wait. What year would this have been? Like
this would have been mid 90s,
mid 90s, yeah. They
early to
were
mid 90s,
they were
and
going
somewhere around
through,
there.
yeah, they were going through some issues around that time, I know.
And I was just like, yeah, we have no more to talk about. Like, that's not who I do my comedy for. Like, I mean, I didn't do that. But that issue with Saturday Night Live came up where uh, Sarah Silverman had been let go from Saturday Night Live, and I think I was dating her at the time, and I can't remember the context now, but I got a call from the press
Hmm.
about maybe somebody was doing a feature on. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was somebody was talking about Saturday Night Live, and it had nothing to do with Sarah. But I got interviewed,
Hmm.
and I said a specific person who worked there doesn't know her ass from her elbow when it comes to comedy. And within like a day, I got a call from my manager who said, "What did you say to so and so reporter?" And I was like, "About what exactly?" And he's like, "About this person at Saturday Night Live." And I was like, "I think I probably said they don't know their ass from their elbow, but I didn't, you know, I may have said buttocks. Like I don't think I was too harsh about it." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, I just want you to know that they called me and said that you're never going to ever be on the show." And I was like, "Well, uh, that's their loss." And so that was that.
Wow.
I don't know that it was actually their loss. They seem to be doing pretty well, despite the fact that I did
Well,
not.
well,
But
like,
it's only been 25 years, probably, so there's still a chance that uh, you know, sometimes it takes a long time to see when people make a mistake.
yeah. What was that? Because like I know around like 94-ish, 95, they were having like ratings issues, and because I have watched a lot about the history of Saturday Night Live.
I feel like it
And
would
they
have been
fight,
around 95, 95-ish,
yeah,
late
because
95, maybe early 96. I can't,
because yeah, because
somewhere around
Sarah
there.
Silverman was Lego in 94. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, what was it? But no, because I know in 90, at the end of their season in 95, they fired pretty much everyone from the cast. And then they had to rehire or hire new people in 95. And only like two or three people got to stay. One of them was Norm.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so that's weird. And that was and one of the things that they said in this documentary I watched was that the people who were writing the sketches at the time in the early 90s, they were wanting to write to their kids. So
Hmm.
that was probably, you know, the thing. Um, but yeah, uh, so that makes sense, or that tracks with the things I've heard about SNL around that time. But yeah. That's still kind of weird though. I don't understand why writing to 12 to 16-year-olds would be like the goal. Most of them can't stay up to watch the show anyway.
I don't know if that's the case. I don't
I
know.
mean, like, why would like I mean maybe the 90s was different, but like I was the only person watching Saturday Night Live when I was 12 and or in middle school or high school. No one else was watching. And I get that it's like a different the mid 20 teens is different from the mid 90s, I guess, but I don't know. That just seems odd to me.
Yeah.
That, but yeah. So did you have any other friends who were invited for auditions on SNL or who became cast members other than Sarah?
Janine was on, I think, at one point.
Yeah, I think
Was
so.
on, and I think that was about it. I wasn't really the type of the crew of people that I was working on. They were not were was not. I can't. I mean, Benjamin may have auditioned. Cross may have auditioned. I just don't. I don't remember. I don't
Okay.
remember. But I didn't have any. I mean, I was friends with Colin Quinn at one
Oh, okay.
point, but I don't remember when he was on relative to when I was. I mean, I used to
Late
play.
90s. Late
Okay, I used to play
90s. Yeah.
poker with him in the early '90s. Wait, yeah, no, yeah. When was that? 90, maybe it was around 94 that I used to play poker with Colin, and 95 out in LA a little bit.
Yeah, because I think he started on the show in 95 and the season after they fired everyone, I think. And then he
Okay.
ended in like 2000 because he did Weekend Update after they fired Norm. So he did Weekend Update from like 98 to
Uh,
2000.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't think I mean, I may have known a couple of people who rode on it, I think at one point, Sloven and Allen,
Yeah.
maybe. I can't really remember. I'm old.
I know
It
that's
was a
why I'm
long
asking
time
you
ago.
this because I've I know a lot about Saturday Night Live. I'm just weird about it. Like I got obsessed with that show back in the day to the point where like I had dial up growing up, dial up internet. Um, even though even though I'm younger than 30, we had dial up and I would print off the list of SNL cast members, like the Wikipedia page, so I could like look through it. And so like now if someone says some random comedian's name, I'm like, oh, that person was on SNL from this year to that year.
Oh, that's
And then
pretty impressive.
it's really weird because it's like it, even if I haven't like looked at that, I haven't looked at that list in like probably almost 10 years, but like that's still something I remember. Like, oh,
Oh, that's
Chris
awesome.
Rock was on from 1990 to 93, but he didn't finish out the last season. He was hired for the fourth season, but he stopped before, that Christmas in 93 or something. And yeah, it's weird. And I also know this is probably the weirder one is that four people who were on SNL at one point share a birthday with me, and I know who all four of those people are and what years they were born. It's
Who are they?
creep. It is Tim Meadows. He was born February 5th, 1961. Chris Parnell, 67. Christopher Guest, he wasn't on for very long. It was in the mid
Oh,
80s, but
right.
he was born in 48. And then who's the fourth one? No, no, there isn't a fourth one. It's just them three and then me. Yeah. So that,
Wow.
but
Wow.
no, I'm weird with SNL. Like it's um but yeah. Uh but that's why I thought I would ask you some of those questions about SNL because I was always like, how come Sam Cedar was never on SNL? He seems like he would have been on back in the day. But yeah. Um let's see. So tell me, oh no, that was the other thing I was wanting to ask. So you did write so like you wrote pilots for certain sitcoms. Did you ever write for a sitcom for like the UPN?
No.
Okay. Because
No.
I've always had this joke in my mind of like IMing the show or calling the show and asking if you ever wrote a black sitcom for the UPN.
No.
Because it
No.
just feels funny. I thought
No,
because I
but
always thought it'd be funny to ask
I
that. Yeah.
did play a I played the character of a whitehead writer on an all black
Yes.
variety show on
Yeah.
Fox.
Hmm.
Um, no, I never was a staff writer on any sitcom ever. I wrote probably close to 10, 10 pilots for ABC. I did NBC, CBS, HBO,
Okay.
AMC. Um, I may have done one for ABC.
Hmm.
And I did, multiple ones for NBC and multiple ones for CBS, and I think two for HBO and one for AMC. Uh, oh, I guess Fox too. I actually wrote one for Fox that, and the independent one, and then so yeah, probably about I don't know 8 or 10. They were
That's
all sort of
cool.
like similar version of itself.
Hmm. And were you ever offered or not offered, but did you ever audition for a sitcom or a show that ended up becoming like a thing,
Oh yeah.
but you didn't get the part
Well,
for it?
I well, there was a lot of those. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of those.
Hmm.
But I was offered the part of Ally McBeal's boyfriend
Hmm.
by David. I can't remember his name now. He was a big writer at the time. He had gone to BU Law School, so we sort of bonded over that. And this must have been in like 96 or somewhere around there, and 96, 97, I can't remember. And he offered me the part, and I did, I was like, I don't want to do that. That's just, I want to do something that's more comedic.
Mhm.
And my agents and managers were very, very bummed. And of course, that went on to be a very big show. They knew it would. I mean, he was one of the
What
biggest.
show was this again?
Ally McBeal.
I've heard of it, but I've never
Yeah.
seen it.
And
Uh,
I was in the pilot of According to Jim.
oh, really? Okay.
Yep. But I was in a situation where I had been I was under two different contracts. My
Hmm.
agent screwed up, and I did not think that show was going to go, and it ended up being a problem. And there's a long story associated with it, but the long and short of it was, I was supposed to be what's her name's brother, Courtney
Hmm.
Thorne Smith's brother, which was a very unlikely combination. So I bet John Benjamin that I was going to get fired, that the show was going to get picked up, that it was going to live on Friday nights, and I was going to get fired by the pilot. And he had to take me to Nobu, actually, which is a fancy sushi place. Um, and to help with that, I was trying to not fit into this family on According to Jim. And so I changed my ringtone to If I Were a Rich Man. And during the rehearsals, I would really wildly I was basically doing Jackie Mason. And to the point at one point where the director said to me, goes, "Do you feel like you're moving your arms around a lot?" And I'm like, "No, am I?" But I just remember going, like, there was one line where I was like, "Jim, I don't understand why you never appreciate my emotions." And it was just, and so I ended up, I mean, my understanding was they were either going to fire her or me. And I was like, how could they even contemplate firing her? Like, and so they did fire me, and I ended up doing my own show for Fox, like 3 months later, which did not get picked up, but it was produced by Conan O'Brien's company, and it was, we shot it up in Canada, and I was the EP of it. And so, it all worked out. I have no regrets about that one. I have really no regrets about any of them, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, it is what it is.
It's interesting. Let's see. Okay, so episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Tell me about your politics, how you got interested in it while you were growing up, and how did you identify politically when you were younger? Were you always, I assume you were always left wing or leftist of some sort, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I got involved in politics as a kid, how that started to interest me, but um, I was doing like a lot of like youth group stuff, and at one point in high school, I got involved with the Charter Commission of Worcester, Mass,
Mm-hmm.
and they were redoing the charter, and it had been, set up to really disempower um, people without any money in terms of representation in the city. You needed every seat on the city council was run citywide. So
Yeah.
you needed a lot of money to run, relatively speaking. And I worked as like really the only paid staff below the director on this charter commission, aside from the members of the commission.
Hmm.
And then with some high school friends, we submitted a charter proposal. And in fact, one of the guys I submitted with ended up being the mayor of the city 30 years later. And I think the other guy, I think another buddy of mine is now I think he worked on that with us, is the president of an HBCU. I can't, Clinton College, I think it is. And so I had I had this dual track going into college, both in terms of student government, but also I was studying government and worked on local political campaigns and congressional campaigns and state senate. And I did an internship at in college at the Connecticut State House, and or not into, it was a course. It was
Hmm.
one of our course credit type of situations. And I think I thought I was going to be a politician when I went to law school. I wasn't quite sure. But I had been very disillusioned by Michael Dukakis losing. I was like,
Okay.
how could that guy be painted as like too left wing and how poorly were the Democrats in defending Dukakis? Uh,
Were
and
you
so
able
I
to
thought,
vote in that election? You were able to vote in that election, right? In 88?
yes. In
Yeah.
fact, I just missed voting against Reagan
Yeah. Yeah.
in
84.
1984
Yeah.
by like 3 weeks. And I was really bummed about that. Really bummed about that. And I think I read the Walter Mondale
Yeah,
biography
you've said that
at the
before.
time.
Yeah.
Um and then I decided maybe I can do more. And so a lot of the comedy I did early on was political.
Hmm.
But then I sort of got away from that. It became more socio-political, I guess.
Hmm.
And uh, so the politics was always there. And when I was in LA, when I was directing Gary Busey in this Comedy Central show, I had to drive out to Malibu every day from this place I was staying in, in Hollywood.
Hmm.
And I would just listen to right wing talk radio all the time. And I started calling in, and I had always, I had a buddy back from Boston who was actually a head writer for Chris Rock's show, a guy
Okay.
named Chuck Sklar, who once said, like, if you ever get a TV show, it's just going to be your mouth talking. And so I was always sort of inclined to do something like that. And when I was out in LA at that time, I think it was after doing I'm with Busey, and I was just wrapping up doing my own show called Pilot Season, which was a sequel to this Who's the Caboose movie I had made for the network Trio, which sort of merged with Bravo.
Hmm.
I got the call from Liz Winstead about doing Air America, and Janine had said, "I'll do it if Sam does it." So that's
Okay.
basically how I got into it.
So tell me about the 88 election and Dukakis losing, and what you think, what you thought about that at the time and how you think about it now.
Well, during that election, over the summer, maybe it was in the fall,
Hmm.
I decided to take a year off. I'd been working in Worcester as a waiter. So, I like Dukakis. I thought like he was I mean, I just remember like he shovels his own walk every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just like an average guy.
Yeah.
And I remember George Herbert Walker Bush came out and tried to like, and I don't know if it was in this election or the one with Clinton, to be honest with you, but he came out with this quote. No, his sister. His sister was deployed to make him seem like a normal guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like this, like from this patrician family type of thing.
Yeah.
And the sister, I remember this quote, said, "We grew up like any other family. Our parents were very strict. If we left our tennis rackets out in the rain, we got punished." And I was just like, how the fuck does Mike Dukakis, who shovels his own walk, like, and I obviously, that's not politics. That's
Yeah.
aesthetics. But it was indicative of this guy's just like lives a middle class life. Like he has an understanding of what your average middle class person, what their life is like.
Yeah.
Like, not living in this bubble of wealth. Dukakis lived a very sort of like modest life in like, in Brookline. And it was sort of a, at that time wasn't as upscale as it is now, but it was, but it was like, like a upper, it was a middle class. He lived a middle class life
Yeah.
and, took public transportation. It's not, and there was two candidates running. I mean, I don't know who I would have rather. I mean, I guess, I don't know if Jesse Jackson had run at that time or
Yeah. He was in the primary that year in
but
'88.
but for the general election, I was like, this guy should win.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't win. And I was just so disillusioned by like how does this country, Reagan was horrible,
Yeah.
and I was like, how does this country? Nobody lives like George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yeah.
People live like Mike Dukakis, and so I was just I was like I think after that I was like fuck politics for at least a short period of time.
That's interesting because I've like I've watched the like presidential debates from that year. Um Even the vice presidential debates from that year, which I thought were even more interesting. And I thought Dukakis did good.
Was that one question about
About
he
the
got
death
nailed about the
penalty,
death
right?
penalty,
Yeah.
and
I felt like that question was inappropriate, honestly.
it was, but there were better ways to address it.
Yeah.
But um, it was a prime example of Democrats being scared of being scared.
Was it really that though? Like, was there like a legitimate shot that Dukakis had at beating Bush that year? Like, was it actually considered competitive at
Well, I
all?
think over the summer, if you look at the polling, it might have been. I mean, I don't know what the
Hmm.
experts were saying at that time. We didn't have access to the same sort of like
We didn't have Nate
analysis.
Silver.
We didn't have Nate Silver. We didn't have the internet. We didn't
Yeah.
have, I mean, uh, there was no. It was a different world.
Yeah.
But
Because
so I don't know.
yeah, because I've seen people make joke like I don't know. This is older stuff. I want to say there's like an episode of like Full House or something where someone said something like someone asked if they had a history of mental illness in their family, and someone said, "Oh, my uncle voted for Dukakis." So I was like, "What the fuck?" Like that's like a legitimate like joke during that time.
Right,
Like
right.
that's and then it made me think about what was it, the vice presidential candidate for Bush in '88.
Quayle.
That guy was like a wild card for that time. I mean, now you can be even worse and be the nominee, but like at the time I looked into him, I was like, he was a little bit of a off character for like a vice presidential pick. And he, not just because of his age, but like there were certain things about him that were like a little weird. Am I wrong? Did people even like talk about that?
What were weird
I
about
can't
him?
remember the specific things. There was just
Uh,
certain things that he said, and then there
well,
was some specific
I
some yeah. Go ahead.
George Herbert Walker Bush had to deal with people who did not people in the Republican Party. It's sort of the same dynamic with McCain.
Yeah.
On some level, it was growing at that time. There were people in the Republican Party who were afraid that he was not conservative enough, socially conservative.
Yeah.
And Quayle was sort of chosen to deliver the social conservatives.
Okay.
And so I think if you go back, if I remember one point, and maybe this was during the Clinton era, I can't remember. He attacked Murphy Brown,
Mm-hmm.
who was a character on TV.
Yeah.
Was a single woman working in a newsroom because she was looking to adopt or have a baby on her own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that was, and he was like, that's the wrong message. We need a wholesome family, not a woman raising a child by herself.
Yeah.
Like he was brought in to do the social conservative stuff.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
That's in
that's all I remember about him
yeah.
and his spelling
Yeah.
powers.
Uh but yeah, then the "You Were No Jack Kennedy" line from Lloyd
Right, by
Benson.
Lloyd Benson. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that's a good one. Um the other thing I thought was funny about that was that whenever they were talking about young people in that debate, they were actually talking about baby boomers kind of and like Xers and like that's like and Dan Quayle himself was actually a baby boomer, so that
Yep,
was wild, wild times, totally different.
it's
Uh
true.
yeah. My parents were able their first election was Carter versus Reagan. So yeah. Um, let's see. How much time do you have? Do you have a hard out or
I
like
got about another 10 minutes.
okay, oof, okay, ooh, I still have like 5 questions here. Um, let's see. Oh, okay. I think I'll go ahead and do okay. So, all right, I'm gonna just tell you what the two things I'm gonna put. So first, I'm gonna ask about um about when Air America ended, and then I'm gonna talk about the libertarian debates and stuff because I have a couple clips I wanted to play about that.
Sure.
So after Air America ended, some of the people who were on Air America they ended up uh and some of them already were on stuff like Free Speech TV and had shows or had their shows played on there. Like Tom Hartman, that's how I know who he
Yeah.
is because of Free Speech TV. I think Randy Rhodes is now on Free Speech TV. She was on Air
Oh,
America too, I think.
uh-huh.
Um, but so how come you didn't end up on something like Free Speech TV? Was that opportunity available, or was it just something you just hadn't thought about doing at the time?
There's been different times I've talked to them over the years. I mean, the biggest the hardest thing for me was like ultimately like I didn't want to have a clock.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure on Free Speech TV it needed a clock.
Mm,
And getting the you know, I just I am not the sort of the business people or the like I'm just not as savvy as some of those people, to be honest with you. And uh, it just didn't seem like the return on investment in terms of the effort on my part. It just didn't seem like it was a fit. Like I just couldn't. I remember saying, like, if you guys can actually cut the show down, you can take it. But
Hmm.
that, that I just didn't want a clock. And that was one of the things that was sort of a little bit of a drag of the Peacock show, to be honest with you, was having that
Yeah.
clock imposed on the Majority Report. I didn't, it made it less fun for me. But, in that instance, I was like, this is a potential opportunity to reach a much, much bigger audience.
Oh yeah.
In the final analysis, it wasn't, which
Really?
is no, which
Hmm.
is, I really, I can't say much more, but like my sense was, it was my opinion.
Hmm.
I had no numbers that it was not getting much viewership on peak on the choice channel, and so a lot of the value of it to me was not there.
Okay. Okay. Um, let's see. All right. So, final thing I want to talk about was your debates with libertarians.
Sure.
Um, so I had two clips for you. The first one was just like a clip of you ranting about Ron Paul's answer at a presidential debate in
I remember
2012.
that. Yeah, cross the street, let him die, type of thing. Yep.
Oh, I wanted to play that, but that's like a whole 4 minute long clip, so I'm gonna not play that. But that was the clip that made me fall in love with the Majority Report and what you do on the
Oh,
Majority Report, because I thought it was funny and I was like, I agree with everything he just said. Libertarians or libertarianism is dumb. Like that's like, and it's angry that like people are thinking this way about student loans and healthcare and stuff. But I really like that clip. Could you talk a little bit more about why you enjoy debating libertarians and your specific anger that you have towards their ideas?
I mean, I don't know if I have anger toward the ideas. Although maybe I think when I start to think of the implications of their ideas, it gets me
Yes.
upset.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't set out to debate libertarians. When I was on Air America, we would take calls,
Hmm.
and you'd have two types of callers. You'd have like sort of movement conservatives and libertarians,
Hmm.
and the movement conservatives would just they're saying such um just sort of complete uh sort of they're spewing such insanity
Hmm.
that, like, I mean, I don't know how you debate. Like, how
Yeah.
do you debate with someone? Donald Trump won the election.
Hmm.
Okay, he didn't. I
Hmm.
mean, how do you debate anything with that? But and so it was really more like, we would get calls on Air America where I remember one guy calling in going like, I can't believe Dick Durbin wore a pink tie on the floor of the Senate. It is, it's it's an embarrassment. Our enemies are laughing at us, he said, and you can't really debate those type of people. It's really more you just fuck with them a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, but when a libertarian calls in, they're convinced that they have this ideology that is hyper rational,
And
and
foolproof.
it is, and they're convinced it's bulletproof, and it is so paper thin. It is not an ideology. At one point, it really becomes like a faith, almost like a religion.
Hmm.
And their logic only works because they have decided to apply it at a starting point with certain assumptions baked in that make it logically follow.
Yeah.
And they don't recognize those assumptions. And I think from my perspective, when I was in school, I was a religious studies and government. They had government. They didn't have political science in my school. I don't know what college majors. And in both those, and particularly in religious studies, my favorite professor basically was like, you need to look at the first assumptions that whoever writes this, and we would study like Max Weber or, William James or uh, um, you know, I don't know, whomever. I mean, like sociologists, psychologists,
Yeah.
philosophers, religious. And he's like, you'll find their first assumptions there,
Hmm.
right? Like somebody's a psychologist or psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever it is. Their first assumption is going to be that the most important element of human experience is an individual one. If someone's a sociologist, they're going to say that it's actually the relationships between people that's the most important, sort of characteristic of any phenomena.
Hmm.
If they're religious, if they're a political scientist, like their first assumptions are embedded in, with how they've decided to.
Yeah.
And so I always, I learned a lot from just that understanding, that you look for those first assumptions. Like you pull people back to their first assumptions, and it's really just ends up being a choice.
Hmm.
Right? It's just, it becomes a choice that they're making.
Yeah.
And libertarians, make a choice that lead to their conclusions, which also happen to help them.
Yeah.
And where they're stationed or where they perceive they will be stationed in life. And so it's always sort of fun and, to do. And that's, and they like to call in,
Yeah.
or they did. I haven't heard from many as of late, but every now and then we get
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, some of my favorite videos, whenever I was in college, like that was one of the first things of the majority of part I ever binge watched, like the playlist Sam versus Libertarians. I used to like watch that. I probably watched that like at least hundreds of times, like the whole playlist. I used to fall asleep to it or wake up to
Oh my
it,
gosh.
and yeah, it was a whole
I'm
thing.
sorry.
But my favorite ones were the ones where you were making fun of the what was it? The libertarians at the debate in 2016. Those were good. Oh wow.
Yeah.
But yeah. But a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, a libertarian called in and asked if you knew about Vosh's coconut analogy,
Oh
Coconut
yeah.
Island.
Yeah.
Did someone eventually tell you
No.
what
No,
oh,
actually,
okay.
no.
Okay, so that's the clip. That's the clip I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay.
Definition of coercion here? Did I miss something?
Let me ask you a basic question, okay? Let's say that you are on a plane and that plane crash lands on an island, okay? There are only a few survivors. In fact, there are only two. And you wake up after the first one does. By the time that you have woken up, the other survivor in this plane has claimed all of the coconuts on all of the coconut trees, stacked them on their pile, sheltered that pile with all the wreckage from the plane, and declared they own it. And they say that they would be willing to give you said coconuts if you throat their cock. Now, would you consider that to be a voluntary interaction? Is that a voluntary interaction?
Okay, so no, I'm actually no, no, Vosh. Thank you for that. That's a great way of getting to the next fundamental, I think, misunderstanding here in terms of a definition of property rights. And I think
but you have to answer the question before you can move on.
I'm gonna get to the coconuts and the deep throating. Don't worry.
But it's yes, no. I just want to know the question answer, and then you can.
Would that be ethical? No, it would be unethical. It would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would never give an analogy with that would involve any type of sex acts. But with that said, yeah, I mean the point's a good one. Yeah, I had never heard that, and yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, in terms of coerciveness, we've heard these same people talk about how coercive it is to not allow people into a restaurant or into a movie theater unless they're vaccinated, that it's coercive. And it is.
Yeah.
It is coercive, even though you don't need to go to a movie
To live.
over the next 6 months or year, let's say, whatever it is, or go into a restaurant. You can still order out from a restaurant.
Yeah.
Still get food in a supermarket. You don't need to do those things to survive, right? I mean, those are sort of luxuries. But I still think that, yes, requiring a vaccine to go into those places is coercive. It's not as coercive as you need to do this to keep your job. That's also coercive. That's more coercive, much more coercive, because you need a job to make money to feed yourself and feed your family. And so the argument that libertarians will deploy, which is, you have a right to quit your job. You're not coerced into anything. Well, no, it's coercive. You can make an argument. It's not as coercive as somebody holds a gun to your head, but it's sort of like a slow motion holding a gun to your head. I mean, and so it's interesting to me if after, having many of them made this argument about vaccines being coercive, which I agree that they are, or vaccine, not quite mandates, but requirements in some places and this and that are coercive. So isn't economic coercion. Yeah.
There's no free market or free trade as they try to claim.
Yes, there is no free market. These free markets do not exist without societies. They set them up. And so they're necessarily government interference in the market. Like, it almost doesn't even make sense to say, that's like saying the government interferes with Medicare or the government interferes with Social Security. The government, I guess you could say, interferes, but it also creates it and allows it to exist and structures it. Sometimes the government does things you don't want it to do, and sometimes it does things you do want it to do. And it creates the system to deliver for certain people. And the market is also created to deliver things for certain people. And at different times over the course of our history, and hopefully into our future, some instances, the market is designed to provide benefit to one cohort of people over another cohort of people. And right now, our markets are designed completely to provide the most amount of benefit and power to the wealthiest.
Yeah. Well, now that you have seen the coconut analogy, you'll keep that one in mind next time the libertarian calls it.
Yes.
But yeah, that I figured you hadn't seen what it was, so I figured I'd play it for you.
I hadn't. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And hopefully you have Vosh on sometime on the Majority Report. That'd be cool.
I mean, I think ultimately, I think ultimately I might do that. I mean, I've seen some of his work and I like it, and I think I don't generally have. I'm sure you've noticed this over the years.
Yeah.
I don't generally have commentators on.
Yeah.
I mean, like on Fridays is the closest thing that we have, and it's usually someone who is written, who's a writer, and so I can sort of like see what pieces they've written that sort of like dovetail into this, and unless it's like pegged to a specific event, like I had Hassan on when he get, but certainly I'm sure ultimately I will have Vash on.
Yeah. That'd be cool. I've been
he
on
reaches the kids. He reaches the kids.
Yeah, because I've been on his stream twice. Once about 2 weeks ago to promote my campaign, and he also did an interview on my show. And the first time he had me on was last April or last March, and like a couple of weeks after I was on his stream, I had a student come in and tell me one day, like, "Hey, I saw you on Vosh." I was like, "You saw me where?"
My good buddy. I first heard about him
Mm-hmm.
from my friend John Benjamin's kid.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Like it was, but yeah,
Said
that
to me, he's like,
was.
"Do you know this guy Vosh?" And I'm like, "Nah, no, look him up."
But yeah, like and the person who said that she saw me on Vosh, her boyfriend, I knocked doors with Bernie with his mom, and I was
Oh,
like,
that's
oh, that's
funny.
cool.
That's really
Yeah,
funny.
so it was like I was like, oh, look at that. It's all connected there. But
That's
yeah,
really funny.
but yeah. But thank you so much for coming on. It means a
Gregory,
lot.
I am I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been. I've always enjoyed your calls when you call in. I I am so excited for you to win your race.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, we'll see. And
Yes.
um,
Hopefully you'll
I
donate to my campaign if you can.
I will, or at the very least, I'll try and get people to direct donations to you. I generally don't donate to campaigns that much, but I think yours is like a maybe just from it was a habit I
Mhm.
developed. But we'll see. But Michael would be very proud
I know.
of
Yeah.
both your own show and your running. He would be super psyched.
Yeah,
And so,
he actually got to come on the show back in I want to say April of 2020. Yeah, it was April of 2020. So
wow,
yeah. Yeah.
that's
But
great.
yeah, he knew about it and he followed me and I think he followed the show too, but yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
hopefully
Thanks
you can
for
come
all the
on
calls.
again in a few months or so because I still had like 5 other questions to ask.
Great, great.
Yeah.
We'll wait till we'll try it again. All
All
right,
right.
thanks, man.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, so long, Gregory. Really appreciate it.